name's Matthew, and I post videos every Monday and Friday, so if you love the tingles, then hit that subscribe button because you are in the right place. So today's video, we are going to be looking at another unsolved murder, or should I say murders, and we are going to be looking at the Villisca Axe Murders. So this was suggested to me by Landon, so thank you for your suggestion. I have no idea about this case, so let's have a look, shall we? So at the end of a quiet street in Villisca, Iowa, there sits an old white frame house. Up the street, there are a group of churches, and a few blocks away is a park that faces a middle school. The old white house looks like many of the others that might fill the neighborhood. But unlike them, it lies abandoned. The house emits no light or sound, and upon closer inspection, the doors are found to be tightly boarded up, and a small sign out front reads, Villisca Axe Murder House. Despite its ominous air, the little white house was once filled with life that was harshly stamped out one summer's night in 1912, when a mysterious stranger broke in and viciously bludgeoned its 8 sleeping inhabitants to death. The event would come to be known as the Villisca Axe Murders. It would baffle law enforcement for over a century. On the 10th of June, 1912, the Moore family was sleeping peacefully in their beds. Joe and Sarah Moore were asleep upstairs, while their 4 children were resting in a room down the hall. In a guest room on the first floor were 2 girls, the Stillinger sisters, who had come for a sleepover. Shortly after midnight, a stranger entered through the unlocked door. Not an uncommon sight in what was considered a small, safe, friendly town, and plucked an oil lamp from a nearby table, ringing it out to burn. So low it supplied light for barely one person. On one hand, the stranger held the lamp, lighting the way through the house. In his other, he held an axe. Ignoring the sleeping girls downstairs, the stranger made his way up the stairs, guided by the lamp, and a seemingly unerring knowledge of the home's layout. He crept past the room with the children and into Mr. and Mrs. Moore's bedroom. Then he made his way to the children's room, and finally back down to the bedroom downstairs. In each room he committed some of the grisliest murders in American history. Then as quickly and as silently as he arrived, the stranger left, taking keys from the home and unlocking the door behind him. The Villisca Axe Murders may have been quick, but as the world was about to discover, they were unimaginably horrifying. The next morning, the neighbours become suspicious, noticing that the usually rambunctious home was dead quiet. They alerted Joe's brother, who arrived to take a look. What he saw, after letting himself in with his own key, was enough to make him sick. Everyone in the house was dead, all 8 of them bludgeoned beyond recognition. The police determined that the Moore parents had been murdered first, and with obvious 40 times. The faces of both parents as well as the children had been reduced to nothing but a bloody pulp. The state of their bodies wasn't the most concerning part. However, once the police searched the home, after murdering the Moors, the killer had apparently set up some kind of ritual. He had covered the Moors' parents' heads with sheets and the Moors' children's faces with clothing. He then went through each room in the house, covering all the mirrors and windows with cloths and towels. At some point, he took a 2-pound piece of uncooked bacon from the fridge and placed it in the living room along with a keychain. A bowl of water was found in the home, spirals of blood swirling through it. Police believed that the murderer had washed his hands before leaving. By the time the police, the coroner, a minister and several doctors had thoroughly pursued the crime scene, word of the vicious crimes had spread, and the crowd outside the home had grown. Officials cautioned the townspeople against going inside, but as soon as the premises was clear, at least 100 townspeople gave in to their gross fascination and traipsed through the blood-spattered home. Oh my god, even one of the townspeople took a fragment of Joe's skull as a keepsake. Surely that's illegal. As for the perpetrator of the Villisca Axe Murders, the police had shockingly few leads. A few half-hearted efforts to search the town and surrounding countryside were made, though most officials believed that, with the roughly 5-hour head start the killer had, he would be long gone. Bloodhounds were brought in, but with no success, as the crime scene had been fully demolished by the townspeople. A few suspects were named over time, though none of them panned out. The first was Frank Jones, a local businessman who had been in competition with Joe Moore. Moore had worked for Jones for 7 years in the farm equipment sales business before leaving and starting his own rival business. There was also a rumour that Joe was having an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law. Though reports were unfounded, the townspeople insist, however, that the Moores and the Joneses harboured a deep hatred for each other, though no one admits it was bad enough to spark murder. The second suspect seemed far more likely and even confessed to the murders, though he later recanted, claiming police brutality. Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly was an English immigrant who had a history of sexual deviancy and mental problems. He even admitted to being in town the night of the Villisca Axe Murders and admitted that he had left early in the morning, though his small stature and meek personality led to some doubt in his involvement. There were certain factors police believed made him the perfect candidate. Kelly was left-handed, which police determined from blood spatters that the killer must be. He also had a history with the Moore family, as many had seen him watching them while at church and out about in town. A dry cleaner in the nearby town had received bloody clothing from Kelly a few days after the murders. He reportedly asked police for access to the home after the crime while posing as a Scotland Yard officer. At one point, after a long interrogation, he eventually signed a confession detailing the crime. However, he almost immediately recanted and a jury refused to indict him. For years, the police looked into every possible part of a larger string of murders, it was likelier to be a local predator, a perpetrator, or a travelling killer, simply passing through town and taking an opportunity. Soon reports of similar enough crimes happening throughout the country began to pop up. Though the crimes were not quite as gruesome, there were two common threads: the use of an axe as the murder weapon, and the presence of an oil lamp set to burn extremely low at the scene. Despite the commonalities, however, no actual connections could be made. The case eventually ran cold and the house was boarded up. No sale was ever attempted and no changes were made to the original layout. Now the house has become a tourist attraction and sits at the end of the quiet street, as it always has, while life goes on around it, undeterred by the horrors that were once committed within. Oh my god. That is so gruesome. I can't believe they never were able to make any connections. This is such a terrifying, unsolved case. But obviously we're going back, I think, was this 1912? So the DNA that probably we could find today wasn't a possibility back then, so you literally had to have more solid evidence. And don't get me wrong, I understand that DNA is solid evidence, but going back to 1912, not being able to test anything. I was thinking, like, they wouldn't have taken samples, would they? Because they wouldn't have survived, would it? Or would it? I don't know. This is so intriguing. Let's see. I don't think they ever found. Oh, but is this most haunted? Oh, the website's gone. I can imagine that to be really haunted. No, I don't think we've managed to discover who did it. But how interesting was it that they found a suspect that kind of met the kind of profile of someone that would be able to do it? He then confessed, detailing the crime, then recanted or retracted his statement, and the jury didn't indict him. It kind of seems like he walked away with murder. Does anyone else not agree? I mean, it is possible. He felt the need to confess, but at the same time, there was quite a lot of evidence that he could have. I don't understand how they could have just let him just walk out. What was his name again? Let's clarify who this was. The killer must have been left-handed. He also had a history with the Moore family, as many had seen him watching them while at church and out about a town, and in a dry cleaner in a nearby town had received bloody clothing from him. And yet, no jury wanted to indict him. That makes total sense, right? I mean, I'm baffled. I'm baffled. Anyway, I hope you found this case to be interesting. I'm baffled by this case. I kind of want to go to this place in Iowa, and I'm very into. I love shows like Most Haunted. There's a show in the UK called Most Haunted. I'm not sure if it's still. I'm not sure if they still make the show, but it was this team of investigators that would go to haunted locations in Britain and try to do investigations to see if they can pick up anything paranormal. I mean, I think depending on who you ask, whether or not they think this show is amazing or not is a bit go either way. I personally find it quite interesting, although we're yet to really see any hard evidence, but I'd love to. That sounds like a good place to do a paranormal investigation, and I'm sure people have, but it would definitely be interesting to witness or watch. I mean, I'd be terrified. I'd be absolutely terrified, but I'd still want to do it. Anyway, I hope you found this case to be super interesting. Thank you so much for your suggestions on my last video. I really appreciate it. I also really appreciate all the support you've given me, and yeah, keep suggesting any cases that you want to hear about. I shall add them to the list, and I look forward to ticking each and every single one off and finding more about these very interesting cases. I hope you sleep well, and I shall see